it's really an honor and privilege to come and talk to you. KSSP and MANS has remained friend for almost more than a decade now, and I still remember KSSP was one of the first few organizations which came out publicly in support of the cause uh, after Dr. Narendra Dabholkar's brutal assassination. So it's really an honor to meet you all, though virtually. I have fond memories of coming to Kerala for your annual program, which was say almost 6-7 years back, and then we have had another opportunity when Dr. Narendra Dabholkar Memorial Award uh, was was handed over to KSSP in Pune. So it's been a association. I got a call from the Lokmat paper that they want to explore about how the thoughts of Dr. Narendra Dabholkar are, what is happening to them, and are they still alive and spreading in different parts of the country. Uh, so I asked them to talk to KSSP president and couple of other people. And as one can understand, All India People Science Network has a huge role to play in this regard. Since last 3 years, AISPN has started observing 20th August as National Scientific Temper Day. And that has actually helped to spread this thought across India. So in based of my knowledge, there are at least 15 or maybe more states where this National Scientific Temperament Day is being observed, and it's been almost a month-long process uh, where people like you and organizations like KSFP are going to masses and talking about the importance of scientific temperament in our daily lives in memory of Dr. Narendra Dabholkar. I think this is the fitting response to the bullets those were fired at Dr. Narendra Dabholkar's body. And we keep on saying repeatedly that thoughts cannot be killed. In these last 9 years, I think with organizations like KSSP and many such like-minded organizations which are part of AISPN, MANS has actually uh, tried to leave it to best of its potential uh, to actualize uh, what what we mean when we say that though one can kill one's body but not the thoughts. So this program, I think, is definitely a step forward between for building bridges between KSSP and MANS, and uh, the few important things which we all are very mindful and proud of KSSP's work, that it has actually over a period of time expanded its scope. Not It has not kept its scope limited to a science popularization organization. So KSSP has a number of things which actually organizations like MANS aspire to learn from. The way it has used cultural engagement as a tool to educate masses, the way it has used, as it is already in your name, it has used the Sahitya literature to create an impact, and the way it has managed to take positions on quasi-political issues which go way beyond the scope of any science organization routinely. But actually, if we start thinking about science, and that is very much related to today's subject, we can't take out politics and broader society from the picture and just keep talking about science in a cocoon which is only restricted to the laboratories and schools. So the most important, I think, backdrop on which we are having this discussion, whatever I could follow from Malayalam, referred to the tough times that all of us are living into and the way our country is heading. So on that background, let's try and think through what the science in current Indian society means. And I will like to start by giving you an example. There are now, it's very difficult to calculate examples in which the mainstream media and the mainstream political parties are actually, instead of spreading scientific temperament, are purposefully spreading misinformation, wrong information, and to an extent superstitions also. But this one which I heard was like top of the order. So you also might have seen this video where a youth president from a political party, which you can easily guess, is claiming in a public platform that the on the 15th August, that the freedom that India has received is not actual freedom, but it's on the lease for 99 years. And though everybody in the audience and even on the stage are super surprised and shocked by these claims, this young girl keeps on repeating about her claims. And then not only that, she goes to an extent and says that, narrates that, I can come up with proofs if you give me time. So I actually started thinking about this phenomena. When we talk about science and when we talk about scientific temperament, then we talk about proof and evidence and all that. Here, the whole language of science and the methodology also of science, not the essence of it, is being used to propagate false information, fake news, which actually are serving purpose of one political ideology. So this is the era in which all of us are living, and this is not only restricted to Maharashtra, not only to Kerala or India. It's been a global phenomenon. The country which we used to think that has inculcated scientific temperament, and that was the important cornerstone for its progress. There had been a prime minister, a president in last term, who in his public rallies claimed that there are that his opponent then, Hillary Clinton, was running a child sexual abuse racket under the disguise of pizza delivering services, which was completely a fake news. There were n number of Americans who we think are educated and have inculcated scientific temperament, chose to believe that. So in a way, what they say, that as a society we are living into a post-truth society. So earlier, when we used to talk about scientific temperament and science, what 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 was the most important thing is that we are seeking the truth. And now what they are saying, and even the experts are accepting, that it's not about pursuit of a truth, but it's about your truth and my truth. So there can't be two different truths when we talk about scientific society. And that's the era in which actually, believe it or not, we have reached in last 7 to 8 years. If we just go back and just think of the unscientific things which have become mainstream in our society. So you must have heard that maybe a year and a half back, the Banaras University decided to start a program, a training program on Bhoot Vidya. So Bhoot Vidya means how the science of ghosts. If we want to spell, means convert it into English, and translate it. So if a university like Banaras University, which has a tradition of more than 100 years, if they are thinking of starting a course in something irrational and unscientific as Bhut Vidya, then we can think in which direction the Indian society is heading. It's not very remote past that Karnataka government, you also must have read this in newspaper, in their national education policy, state level, they were asked to come up with a state level policy statement for the national education policy. And this is the official government document which went to the National Education Policy Central Committee, which claimed that Newton and Pythagoras are fake news. And when they were asked by media about the source of this news, then the person who was heading that white paper said that he has Googled it and he has found it on the Quora. So those are the ways in which people now take identifying or scrutinizing something as their yardstick. So it becomes pretty evident to us that this is the one of the most challenging eras of Indian history, where the science in Indian society has come under a serious threat, a serious attack. And the brutal assassinations of Dr. Narendra Dabholkar, then Comrade Pansare, Kalburgi sir and Gauri Lankesh are testimony of that. What actually was fault of these four comrades? That they were trying to propagate. Though they were from the different wakes of life and different streams and different political ideologies, the most common thread which joins them, that they were trying to inculcate the culture of inquiry into our society. They wanted people of this country, citizens of this country, to start thinking for themselves and not believe because somebody is saying so. And from their murders, it's pretty evident, and in a way, it's the start of that downfall, the attack on Dr. Narendra Dabholkar, which was in August 2013. Next year, it will be 10 years to that brutal attack. And what has happened in those 10 years, not only in Maharashtra, but across our country, all of us have witnessed. But what I want to caution all of us is there is a great tendency amongst us also, the rationalist movement, the scientific temperament movements, to negate or nullify or devaluate the scientific things, the scientific tradition that has been a cornerstone of our country. So it's not that for the first time in this country we are talking about science. It's not for the first time in this country we are talking about rationality. Though there have been organized efforts in this country for many decades to make sure that the scientific temperament is not inculcated into the minds of the people of country. There is a great tradition, and which starts right from Buddha, Basavanna, and Charvaka. So all those who were proponents of reason and scientific temperaments, they didn't come from any European Renaissance or any other foreign legacy. They were our own. So when we talk about science in Indian society, we just need to be mindful that it's not many a times it happens. Many a times it happens that as our political opponents and the people who are trying to propagate the religious bigotry and use religion as their weapon in politics, talk about the great heritage of Indian science, and just for the sake of opposing, many a times we also get carried away and try and negate or minimize the great tradition of scholars we have. Obviously, the scholars that they are talking about and we are talking about are different. But the point I want to make here is it is very important for us, the truth seekers, to remember that this is not alien tradition. This is very much rooted into our Indian society. So obviously we can borrow a few things from the Renaissance movement in Europe and all other things, but reclaiming our own past, where there has been a serious efforts to put forward scientific thought. It might not be as evolved as current scientific methods, but if we talk about Ayurveda, the kind of observations Ayurveda, I am an allopathic doctor, and I have my lot of reservations against making it as a mainstream medical practice. But at the same time, as a truth seeker, I need to have an open mind to understand and appreciate the kind of observations without any scientific method and tool. Those have happened about human body and human mind, as well as the remedies, is phenomenal. So if we embrace them with an open mind, though they are not tested, so they need to be tested with the modern methodologies of science before we accept that. But as observations, there are quite a few observations over period of time which have happened in ancient India, which needs to be considered as a important hypothesis. So rather than discarding them, if we start talking to them with open mind, I think that is very important direction. Otherwise, we also easily fall prey to the polarizing statements, and as a part of it disown the tradition that we have in our society. So that is important point. If we had this tradition of Buddha and Charvaka and Aryabhatta uh, and Ayurveda to an extent, what happened to that, and why suddenly all that science or the progress that we were making as a country in science and scientific temperament, where it vanished? So there are 3 or 4 things which we all need to understand, which as a part of organized religion, were kind of entrusted on Indian society, and those became the most important hurdles for propagation of scientific temperament and scientific attitude inquiry in this country. And this can very well be considered as the dark period of Indian society, where there are 4 things, at least 4 things I can think of. One definitely is the caste system. Second is the patriarchy, and which inequality between men and women, which actually didn't allow half of our population any access to education. The caste system similarly didn't allow access to education for majority of our population. So these were the front runners when we start talking about, when we think on the lines of what happened to this tradition of inquiry and scientific temperament. And obviously, as one can understand, there had been these systematic efforts to alienate and assassinate the propagators of truth seekers and scientific temperament in our country, right from the uh, ancient ages. So when we talk about caste system, as a majority of the portion of our country was not able to get access to education due to the caste system, obviously the impact it had on the propagation of science and scientific attitude in our society was huge. Uh, Similarly, the patriarchy and the exploitation that came with patriarchy and inability of almost half of the population of women to access education was also very important part. But apart from these two, Indian psyche has always remained predominantly supporter of the knowledge that comes from tradition and holy books. So belief in holy books and what is written into those holy books and taking them as the final word, the word of Almighty, and not challenging any of that. Uh, Last week also, somebody, you must have heard this statement. A high court judge from Delhi publicly said that the Manusmriti should be considered as a great book, and every student in Indian society should start reading this book uh, and whatnot. Manusmriti, as one can understand, is one of the important sources of all these caste systems and patriarchy and exploitative practices, which actually hindered the progress of science and scientific temperament in our society. But still, that's the reason why Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar chose to burn Manusmriti. And we are living in an era where a high court judge, a lady judge who actually got opportunity to learn because Baba Saheb Ambedkar burned Manusmriti, because in Manusmriti it is clearly written that women don't have any access to education. So this is the kind of a impact the holy books have on Indian psyche, that even an educated high court judge in this era can't get out of it. So that is the third important reason. And fourth important reason, I think, which all of us know, and which is the basic reason why AISPN has decided to observe Dr. Narendra Dabholkar's death uh, death anniversary as National Scientific Temperament Day, because the culture that we live in is generally referred to as shut up culture. Shut up culture. So there is hardly any scope in our culture to be inquisitive. To be inquisitive is generally considered being equivalent to being arrogant. So if somebody, even a kid in the school or college, starts asking questions, then rather than encouraging that, uh, even the teachers in school and colleges, they consider that child as arrogant. So obviously, if in schools and colleges we don't train our students to ask questions, then there is no wonder that all the innovation that is happening in technology, like internet or Google or Facebook, you name anything, artificial intelligence, all of that, the innovations are coming from the West, because they have a culture where asking questions is important part of the education. So these four things at some point of time, gradually over a period of decades, centuries, uh, became the central part of our system, culture, and education. And one can consider this as a counter revolution in Baba Sahib Ambedkar's word of non-scientific attitude and the efforts of organized religion to get control over the lives of people. So these are some important things which we need to be mindful when we talk about the current challenges and how we want to propagate the science and scientific temperament in the current scenario. So this is the last part of my talk, and maybe I'll spend another 10 more minutes on this, and then we can open the session for discussion. Many times, many of us know that these are the problems. Now, the real question comes, and where Dr. Narendra Dabholkar stood different from many other his contemporary social workers is he didn't stop at the level of analyzing why this problem is happening, but then he tried to offer solutions to that also. Not only offering solutions, but he built the organization around those solutions. And not only he built the organization around those solutions, he made sure that the organization has acquired enough momentum and strength which can continue even beyond his existence. So next year it will be 10 years after Dr. Narendra Dabholkar's assassination, but the organization that he nurtured, MANS, has taken immense strength from his sacrifice and continued with his work. So what are those things which we can learn from what Dr. Narendra Dabholkar did on ground, mm, which can be helpful for propagation of scientific temperament and making Indian society a science-friendly society? So there are few things which I just want to highlight. And one of the most important thing around this area is our stance about God and religion. So it's the stance Dr. Narendra Dabholkar took and MANS stands for is a bit different than the rationalist movements in the country and globally also, the atheist movements and rationalist movements in country and globally also. So we don't have denying existence of God or religion as prerequisite to become member of MANS. So you are not expected to be a non-believer or atheist to become part of MANS. And the stance, to elaborate on this stance, uh, what we believe that the Constitution has given a right to each and every citizen of this country to believe in whatever God and religion he or she wants to believe or even not to believe. What we insist on is there should not be any exploitation on the name of God and religion. And wherever that exploitation happens, it is the constitutional duty of every Indian citizen to stand from the side of the scientific temperament against the exploitation that is happening on the name of religion and God. And unless and until we start scrutinizing what we mean by God and what we mean by religion, it's very difficult for us to define where the exploitation starts. So it's the matter of discussion, it's the matter of debate, and it's the matter of progress. So we believe in evolution. So we believe that people evolve, and there are n number of examples of MANS workers now who started as believers and even as a person who followed superstition, and over period of time they changed to a more rational individual. Some of them might still have kept their faith in God and religion intact, but in general life what they mean by religion and God is more closer to a humanitarian model of religion and God which supports the open inquiry. So we believe that it is a process, it's not an event. And this stance basically helps us to open dialogues with community. We work in a community where uh, the impact of the God and religion is very high. And if we start denying that existence right from the beginning, obviously there is hardly any acceptance which come our way from society. Though this is not only strategic, but at our heart we believe that that should be the stance one should take because human nature is always subjected to change. So this is was one and most important thing for scientific spread of scientific temperament, that our stance about God and religion. Because when we start scrutinizing things in the name of science, the first battle line is drawn, especially about the religion and existence of God. And especially in the era we are living in, where there are specific efforts to make sure that the religion and God becomes part and parcel of every single event and existence of the Indian citizen's life, then obviously to challenge and scrutinize anything that is happening around us, we need to have a solid ideological standing. So that's one thing. Second thing is very important, and which KSSP in the beginning only I mentioned is a role model for, which we have tried as MANs, tried to learn from them, is whatever we are trying to do should be rooted completely into our cultural ethos. So whatever we are talking about, there are cultural traditions which have talked about it. Like you have your Kalazatha. We did our Ringan Natya after Dr. Narendra Dabholkar's assassination. So our culture has a huge tradition which supports the rationality and dialogue and humanity, and which is a rich tradition. We should not alienate ourselves from that tradition. And scientific temperament and spread of science should not be considered restricted only to PowerPoint presentations and an exercise which aims at converting the converts. So if we want to go to grassroots, then cultural programs is a very important tool for science spread of um, scientific temperament. And obviously the literature. KSSP again has, I think, shown the path that how one can develop a good democratic process of developing grassroots literature, grassroots friendly literature where people can contribute and learn at the same time. So in MANS, we have also tried to follow a similar model where literature plays a very important role. One can easily imagine the reason why none of the writings of Charvak are available, because they were burned. And as one can easily understand, this is though one can kill the physical body, the thoughts which are written in books, uh, they don't have any shelf life. So it's very important for us to create our own literature and try and distribute it to masses. And the third important thing which MANS under able leadership of Dr. Narendra Dabholkar has done is to get associated with the societal reform through the reform of religious practices. So the Cracker-Free Diwali initiative that MANS started and now has become the official policy of Maharashtra government, or environment friendly Ganesha uh, initiative, which now also has become a part of Maharashtra state policy. See, we never said that you don't observe Ganesh Chaturdashi, which is a very important festival in Maharashtra. What we said, Dr. Narendra Dabholkar said, was that whatever we are doing to observe, celebrate Ganesh Chaturdashi should be environment friendly. We need to make sure that we don't immerse plaster of Paris or any other pollutants in the liver by at the time when we immerse our idols in water. And that actually over a period of time opened a series of dialogues between believers and people who wanted to propagate scientific temperament. And over a period of time, what we realized through a series of dialogues, people started changing their minds. So to an extent that in Pune or Nashik, now there are more than 1 lakh Ganesh idols which are donated and not actually immersed into water. Cracker-Free Diwali was also a similar exercise. So we didn't say that you don't celebrate Diwali, but there, whatever we are doing as a part of our celebration should not be troublesome to others, and at the same time If it is associated with some humanitarian virtue, then that's even better. So rather than saying don't do this or don't do that, if we start giving creative alternatives to people, then the connect with the society becomes uh, thicker and more organic. The last but most important thing which I want to emphasize is there are some reform traditions which are originating from inside religion. I don't know what are those kind of traditions from Kerala, but in Maharashtra we had saint tradition, Warkari tradition, which is generally called as, which was in a way in those days was rebel against organized religion and Vedas, but they didn't deny existence of God. But at the same time, they kept on uh, kept on developing literature and methods which are very much supportive of science. So rather than alienating them, there must be some similar traditions in each part of the country. Like in Assam, there are certain traditions of in West Bengal and Assam, there are the local traditions which actually helped to people to become decaste and just devote them to the cause of society and humanity. There must be some traditions like this in Kerala also, like the Sufi tradition, which generally is considered one of the important solutions to the radical Islam, because where the reasons and science fails, many a times these kind of a traditions are very useful to open up a dialogue and heal the minds tormented by the radicalization process. So I'm pretty clear in my mind that it's a journey, as Dr. Narendra Dabholkar has said himself, that the success of the work that I do, in the area that the work in the area that I do is measured in the scale of centuries and not in the scale of years or decades. So this is a endless battle, as he said, but the reason we are into it because we think that this is the right way forward. So how many people and how convinced they are doesn't matter. For our own growth, for becoming a better human being, for becoming a more responsible citizen, this is the way of life. Science as a way of life we have chosen. So it doesn't get restricted only to popularizing the methods of science. At some point of a time, we believe, like KSSP has done, many other science organizations in this country will start utilizing this scientific temperament and the methods and the responsibilities come with that, to question the politicians also. So it's not only about organized religion, because organized religion and organized politics have become almost synonymous in our country. So I hope that at some point of a time in our lifetime or in the lifetime of the next generations, we will see a era when the science becomes the central way of living, and the issues individual, family, and society has, they are addressed through a scientific temperament with humanitarian compassion. Thank you.